After getting born again at a tender age, Caroline was set for a life committed to salvation, but things would take a turn the first time she got pregnant.
I think the second month, I was like, I can't have this baby. Remember, I am a leader. I have been a CU leader since I was like 15. Everybody knows me for that. I have done missions, I've gone preach, I brought so many people to Christ.
The impact of an abortion would see her detached from a life after Christ.
Worship is a big thing for me. It just brings me very close to God. So the first thing was to cut off any music. Even church, because church will bring that aspect of worship. So I just stopped going to church. I just wanted to numb off anything I knew in the past. And for me, that's death. So I died. My soul, something died.
Choosing to continue with that relationship would bear heavy consequences on her.
It was a story of abuse. It was a story of, I'm not innocent because I'm also really an angry person inside. It's like you're drowning and just trying to survive.
Having been brought up in a Christian family, it was only time until Caroline accepted Christ for herself.
My dad's and mom's siblings, most of them are born again. So one of them was going to preach, and she called for an altar call, and I always remember I was 12. And when he said, no one wants to get saved, and I had come with her, and one who came to answer the altar call, and one mad person. So this is the two of us. And I came back. What happened is actually for a long time I wanted to get born again because I could see everyone in my family were born again. They're trying to explain. I had no idea what they were doing. But just knew by then, I think there was a lot of fear of hell, fear of dying as a sinner. So I remember I got saved more from the fear of hell. But I'm really grateful. The end justifies the means. After that, I'm still in my normal church. If you know the mainstream churches, they don't really have a lot of teachings in the way of spiritual growth. They have teachings more in the way of character, temper, not like how you should behave. You know, it's more discipline than a spiritual growth. So there wasn't much there. We did the Bible and everything, but when I went to Form 1 and Form 2, I sort of got lost.
With the desire to draw closer to God in that period, Caroline went into prayer and fasting.
Evening when I was going to pray to break the fast, which is very interesting because now my parents being very religious, yoku of prayer was not something they favored, let me say like that, because I had a grandmother who was prophetic and which looked like a nuisance then, like too much. So if I prayed too much, it looked as if I was bending towards cultic, you know, I don't know if I can understand. So I remember if I really wanted to pray a lot, I would go to the toilet because you can lock. So if anybody knocks, you're in the bathroom, so nobody can. So I remember I went to the bathroom, knelt down. I used to kneel down in the toilet, and then I would pray. And as I was praying, I remember I had my mom sort of shout, like exclaim, and her dad, what happened? And imagine that day, my dad came back with a letter from another school. That's like one of the major miracles that ever happened to me as a young child. He came back with that letter. So that day I was praying, the headmistress of the school, he really wanted me to go called her. He had been trying, but wouldn't get it. So he got a friend, Wakaenda. He said, go and tell yourself. And he went and came back with the letter.
She would later finish high school at the new school, join campus with aim to commit to her salvation.
I was serving at the Christian. Actually, again in the third week, I started serving in the choir subcommittee, the music subcommittee for the Christian Union. And after that, I went on until I became the choir director. And still finished university like that, and my musical growth now actually really happened at the university. finished university, and then it was out, you know, to look for a job. But then I think my dad was getting a bit edgy, like, huyu ni kama yuko serious kutafuta job. So I remember then, because I did horticulture, it wasn't really a thing then. Agriculture was a thing. I was like, horticulture, what is this? So even ukiambia mtu akutafutia job ajui, it's like the guys who did actuarial science or all these new courses, then you tell somebody I did actuarial science, so you don't, how can I help you? No, they don't even understand what you're doing. So one time, I can't remember how God connected things, and my dad met somebody who knew somebody else, and I got invited to a company, the biggest, actually the biggest exporter even today in Kenya. They were looking for management, they were very new, so they're looking for management trainees. So I went and I got the job.
As she got settled into her job, the realities of work started affecting her spirituality.
I was so busy at work, I wasn't going to church or anything. Because I'm working 6 days, namka 4:30, narudi 3. And no, narudi like 8, 9. Like, I'm just so exhausted. Wake up again, you're almost on autopilot, like a robot. You're going back and forth, back and forth. And yeah, so I'm really on autopilot, and the one day you're given an off, you're so tired, you just sleep. You sleep and wake up at 2, wash your clothes, clean your house, and then like continue. So there was really no time for church. And I remember one brother telling me that, who had also worked, and I think he knew the impact. He told me, Carol, if you take a plant and like a potted plant and remove it out of the pot, what happens? It dies. So he said, if you're not in fellowship, you will find that your salvation is gone. And it was scary, but I did not know what to do. I nilijitahidi. I would read my Bible, I would pray very much in the morning, but it could not sustain.
Even though that was her life then, Caroline has grown to understand the importance of both fellowship and a personal relationship with God.
In my walk with God, I think God asked me, if I threw you in Middle East where there is no Christian, are you able to stand for me? And I think for me that has been my test of life. Like God allowing me to be removed enough that I can stand for myself. So that time in high school I was removed, I couldn't stand for myself. Now here I am again, I am removed at work, and I couldn't stand for myself more than 5 weeks. 5 weeks is how much me and God could sort each other out without other people, without fellowship. I'm not saying fellowship is not important, but fellowship cannot sustain you, because as soon as you get out of that fellowship, kama hujasimamia na Mungu, then it becomes impossible. So that has been one of the journeys of my life.
As she continued with her job, Caroline started a relationship that would eventually test her resolve.
For him, he was doing what he knows. He's not born again. He had seen a girl he likes, and he just went on. I knew better because I was born again. I knew not to mix with with an unbeliever and everything that would come through, and sort of his expectation for the relationship was very different from mine. And eventually I found myself messing up, and the first time I found myself pregnant, I think the second month, I was like, I can't have this baby. Remember, I am a leader. I have been a CU leader since I was like 15. Everybody knows me for that. I have done missions, I've gone preach, I brought so many people to Christ. And there are so many people that are looking up to me. I was like, I can't do this. So in self-righteousness, I feel as if I've got to do this for God.
For Caroline, this proved to be a huge test, as she was leaning towards not keeping the baby.
This child is bringing an inconvenience. And for me, the inconvenience is not even me. Remember, I'm working. It's not like I'm depending on my parents. Remember, this guy is not married, so we can actually get married. But because I have a path, a straight and narrow path, and this path is where you live your life and you meet another person and you get married in righteousness, and you don't, there's this, I don't know if you understand, this perfect path. And now I've messed that perfect path. and I'm feeling like I have to correct that perfect part. I know I am wrong, but I can't mess up because this is the message I've been preaching, the message of sexual purity, the message of, and now I've messed it myself. So the best way is to correct it. I was like, okay, so what do we do? So I don't know, he went, talked to a doctor, and a week later, I went into this clinic. It was all professional. You know, it wasn't like, I don't know, I can't say, people say, I don't know, trauma, nothing. They just put me on anesthesia, woke up and I had periods. But remember, it was just a week. So it was as if I had missed and then got in a week's time.
As she reflects, the aftermath was quite devastating as she was battling the guilt of what had just happened.
The best thing that would have happened to me that time is to keep that baby. Because now it would have been public, I deal with it and we go on. But then I have a secret guilt. I cannot deal with it. I hate myself. I hate everything about me. And I try to break up with this guy, it doesn't happen. And so we continue with the relationship. And now we have this thing we've put back there. Yes, I don't think his conscience has any issues with it. Mine has big issues. So what happened after that, I started numbing myself because what you're feeling inside is so bad that you just try to use anything. I don't even know how I did not get into any addiction, but I just started numbing myself. So one of the ways to numb, worship is a big thing for me. It just brings me very close to God. So the first thing was to cut off any music, my own music, any worship, anything, even church, because church will bring that aspect of worship. So I just stopped going to church. Anything that brought, I just wanted to numb off anything I knew in the past. And for me, that's death. So I died. My soul, something died. And therefore, I'm this person who is very progressive, career-wise, because now I'm putting all my energy and everything. Career-wise, I'm doing very well. I'm growing. Even sometimes I would lose a job on Friday and get it on Monday. I just had so much favor at work. I had promotions like every 6 months. I really rose the ranks of my career, but it was never the same.
The next phase of her life proved even the more difficult as she went on to live with the circumstances she was running from initially.
I intentionally decided, you know what, I'm going to get pregnant. And as soon as I discovered I was pregnant, I went and told my mother, so that she can get used to the shock, like very, very quickly. And you understand, of course, the reality of it was very different. The impact I was afraid of, because, hey, kama kungekuwa na social media that day, ningetrend, let me tell you. I could have trended. The news went like with wildfire. And the worst thing is my friends came to see me. Sometimes my friends, my family, people would come back and give me what people are talking about, and it was so heartbreaking. The same exact thing I was afraid in the first time exactly now happened. The church really went rogue on me. And that's what I was sort of, I don't know. Anyway, so I just took my life, went through my pregnancy, and when the baby was born, I moved in with the father now. So that's how we started living together.
Living together was a big challenge that brought with it a lot of abuse.
I'm not innocent because I'm also really an angry person inside, and you know, there's so many things. So it's like trying to, you're drowning and just trying to survive. But one of the biggest fights we had is I wanted us to get married and make it official. But again, I told you, there's what he knows and what I know. For him, marriage is just living together. I mean, see, we are staying. Like, what's the big deal? And which is, I actually see that a big dilemma now with the current age. And it just frightens me that everybody thinks it's okay just to come here into each other's house. Don't let parents know, don't, you know, understand? And I just kept feeling, why you can't do so? That actually became a major cause of fighting between us. And I would say, if you're not going to get married, I mean, let's just decide, you know, like give ultimatums and everything. If you're not going to get married, wacha sasa ikae.
This would be the choice that set Caroline up to start again, but it was not so straightforward.
I realize how much painful it is even for the father to lose a child. But that particular time, I'm obsessed in the fear of losing my children. I don't really care. So I just take my children, take them to my parents, and my dad tells me, take this 5,000, go back to Nairobi, start your life. They come back and start living with my brother and wife. They're just newly married. So it was a very difficult situation for me, you know, because I'm older than him, just to be able to stay with them. But I start life there. And again, that is one of my turning points, because I am with my brother and the house is full. It's just not me. We are all young, right? We are all in our 20s, and we have our siblings who are in their teenage. Ndio tumekuja Nairobi sisi wote na tuko kwa my brother plus his friends. That house was 2-bedroomed, but we were there like 10.
While living with her brother, she starts going back to church and seeking God once again, especially with all that had happened.
I start praying and I start connecting with God, and eventually I get my job. When I look back at it, it looked like a long time, but in 1.5, like less than 1.5 months, I got a very, very good job. God gave me a very, very good job. I was able to have my kids back, I think, in 3 months, you know, get a house, start again. And this is one of the things I've done in my life, started again so many times, but then we started again, had the kids back. And I looked at myself, and I was then, I think, 28, 29, and I was like, wow. I have a whole life ahead of me, a whole young life ahead of me, and there's nothing more important to me than connecting with God. And I was like, this is going to be a big barrier for me, because I don't want to pretend. I remember one of the boys that was trying to sort of mess up with me, born again. I remember him telling me, Carol, all these girls with single mothers, they have to get a boy who takes care of them. And he's born again. And I was like, no, that's not the life I want. I want, if I'm going to raise my children, I raise them in purity. I raise them in righteousness. I just don't want to have a double life. So it's either I'm married or not married. I'm not going to have any middle ground here. And
As she committed to church and prayed to God for direction in her life, Caroline met George, who is her husband today.
I remember I just come from Mombasa. Those are the times, you know, I just cleared school and stuff, and so, you know, trying to, you know, you don't want to be back in Mombasa, you don't want to be where you want to be in Nairobi. And so back then we also involved me and my brother as a producer. It's called Big Soul. One day, pilka tu ile, I see someone in the booth, you know, and at that time actually my brother was the one producing her, and my brother was impatient. So I felt like, let me just go and help out and try to show her, this is how you can sing, this is how you can do stuff. She was like giving up, you know. So I entered the booth and we started talking, you know, she just showing how do like this, do these runs, you know, sing like this. And that was our first encounter.
this is like 5 years in the corporate world. I've even learned to some curse words and everything. It's so natural, I'm not even realizing. So I remember I was there, and he starts preaching to me. You know how you know the Lord can help you and come into your heart. It's like, what? It's like, I'm saved. Then he looked at me, I was like, you don't act like you're saved. You don't look like there's nothing in you here that looks like you're saved.
I'm actually very honest. So if I see something black, I just say black. And I think she had some vulgar words, you know. I was like, why are you saying that? You know, you don't need to shout like that. And so we ended up speaking.
Caroline got to share her past with George, and this saw their relationship blossom with a desire for marriage.
I had an inclination that I liked her, you know, something like that. And so when she gave me all this story, I remember this what I did. I just turned back and I told her, will you regret? She said, regret what? I said, will you regret? Because I was already sure of what I wanted. And I said, so I expressed myself to her and told her, I'm interested with you. There are many beautiful people out there, really, there. But what I saw in her was a friendship. And what also connected between me and her was the ministry that we both had. She was a musician, I was a musician. But what we created as friends was what now led us to, you know, have a commitment for each other. And I can't say that I had the story and then I became pity on her. No. It was nothing of that sort. I simply loved her and I felt she's stronger for what she has gone through. Did I know what I was going into, having 2 children in marriage? I did not know. All I know is that I went into it because I knew it was something for me at that particular point, and I do not regret.
As they grew closer to each other, the age gap reality dawned on them since Caroline is 8 years older than George.
I was very prejudiced. I was one of the very, very prejudiced people, such that if you are 3 days younger than me, you are a child. Because he was younger, it really, really troubled me, and I felt as if I was doing the wrong thing constantly, and I was even afraid to introduce him to my friends, my family.
There was a lot of opposition, actually from her colleagues. You know, at that time she was in a very high caliber job, you know, everything, she's 6-figure, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So people would have imagined maybe I'm only interested in her because of money. And also some other people were saying she was interested with me because of my musical potential, celebrity kind of status, you know. I remember we went to some serious pastors here in Nairobi, some very big pastors, about 4 of them. 2 would say, you know what, George, I know I don't see any problem with her, but do you really have to?
As the questions lingered, George was not letting down, and together with Caroline, they set out to meet their respective parents.
I was this guy with some dreads. I was a yo-yo, but I think I was mature. Because what I did, I remember I told her I would want to go meet your father. And you know, the father is a Meru guy, this serious Meru people, yeah. And so I went. I remember that day I went with my dress and stuff. I went to meet the father. I think less than 10 minutes, Mzee gave me the okay. Like literally gave me the okay. The mother took time, let's say maybe 5 years. Some brothers, it was instant, some other brothers took another 5-10 years until they approved me. But as of now, I think I have the 100% tick.
Their side of the family was actually the easier one. I'm really grateful. I think I'm grateful for the family, but I think also the type of person he was. So a lot of his family members was like, we've never seen him play with girls. Actually, one of the cousins, like, we were even starting to think he's gay. like we've never seen him play with girls. So for them, they were like the first person he introduced, they knew he was very serious. So nobody really pingana. They were like, George kama ameamua, this is but they have never really seen him play around with girls. All the siblings were really amazing to me. None of them were judged. If they were, maybe secretly, but I never got to feel judgmental. I never got them to see them like hate my children or treat them differently, even when these others were born. And I'm really grateful. He is one of course, we've had our ups and downs as in-laws, but it never had really to do with the children or anything else.
A year after meeting, the two would get married and the realities of living together set in.
Financially, initially, for me it was a challenge. It was a challenge from my end because at least for her, she had a career. For me, I was now a budding musician, doing production, doing music, making music for people in River Road, in where, you know. So I was not established financially. And I'm actually very honest to say, this first 7 years, literally, she held me. It was tough. It was tough where you have nothing to do. Things are not working out. Yes, you're not there, your music is being played everywhere, but music hasn't really started making money, you know. So when I say 7 years, I'm not saying that I wasn't active for 7 years. Let's say the first 2 years, first 1 year, we set up our company, Farm to Fork, so we started receiving tenders. But even if it was a company and I'm also part of the company, I still felt like it's not me. Well, the company is still there, I'm the director, I'm the managing director in Rwanda, She's the managing director here, and the company is still working on several years later, and is still surviving. But back then, I felt I'm riding on her talent, and so I didn't feel good. So I felt like I'm also not chipping on anything. But so money would come from abroad, anything. She would not know anything, and she would trust me with the money. I would go, withdraw, would do anything, and I never stole any money. If I felt like buying anything, I would say, oh, I bought some shoes, and so there was that transparency between me and her.
Beyond financial challenges, there was a lot more going that led each of them on separate spiritual paths.
We used to quarrel a lot, stay 4 days without talking, whatever. And then I was a little bit like, for example, if the kids were watching the TV and they have lost the remote and they're about to sleep, I would make them not sleep. I would tell them, please look for it, because if you want it, you will find it. But now, because you don't want it, those kind of things, that kind of toughness is what now also brought a lot of conflict. So the first 7 years was, those quarrels, those kugombana, kufanya, all those things. When we were back in Rwanda, I even stopped going to church, because we would go to church. We were driving from church, even out before we were out of the gate, we were quarreling and we were shouting. So it's embarrassing. You're coming out of church, the children in the car, you're quarreling, you're shouting at each other. So it made me stop going to church completely. And I remember there's a time in 1 year or 2 years in Rwanda, my wife would go to church and I don't go to church. So spiritually now I had to reach a point where now I had to grow by myself, because now I'm one person who's also very expressive. If I have an issue with someone, I cannot go to church and raise my hands. One point I said, listen, I'm going to reset myself, and that's what I did. I reset myself and I went back to read the Bible by myself. I said, I'm not going to give tithe, I'm not going to do whatever. I want to understand what God says, and whatever He says, then I'll do it. And that's how I started by myself, and slowly, I was able to heal, and now we can go to church together.
On the other hand, for Caroline, that season called for a lot of prayer and self-reflection.
When we are in harmony or in flow, things work out very well. So there's a time I realized that our financial woes will never be over until our marital woes are sorted. So I stopped praying for finances. I stopped praying, let me say now my personal spiritual journey. I started praying for my marriage. And it took 5 years, maybe a very, very long time. And even now, even him, he says, if we are in agreement about something, it works very well. So what the enemy was doing was put us in loggerheads that we can't really get anything to work. And once we started, I can't say we learned to work together. Yes, we did learn, but it was just the grace of God. We found it easier to talk. We found it easier to plan. We find it easier to disagree without killing each other, because he's very opinionated, I'm very opinionated. He's very talkative, I'm very talkative. A lot of people have two people, like one is very quiet, one is very talkative. As we are actually both, we can go on and on and on. You have to hear my point, you're not hearing my point, I'm feeling myself hard. This you never change, it could go on and on and on. But even just getting to that point of disagreeing without killing each other, that was a big thing. So for me, I can say one of the biggest now turnaround was that we realized that harmony in marriage is what is going to result to harmony in our family and everything.
George and Caroline are now parents to 7 girls, and as George reflects, it really takes heart and commitment.
When we had a wedding, it was a beautiful wedding in Westlands, and then we had it's called what? A reception at Lavington. It was in newspaper, it was on some magazines. And so I found people calling me and people having sudden inspiration. Hey, even me, I'm going to get married. So this is what I used to tell people, do not jump and run onto it. Wait for your time. Because there are some people who just get a sudden inspiration and they run to, marriage is a commitment. It's really a commitment. I don't think it's about the age, it's about maturity. Because you can find people who are 40, 50 years old, but they're still immature, right? You can find men who are 40, 50 years, but they're very mature. You can even sit down and talk with them. They talk about party, about clubbing, about whatever. They don't talk about investment. There are people who cannot even sit down. Even at my age right now, there are people I cannot sit with because we cannot even talk. Right now, I'm thinking about my 7 children, the legacy that I'm going to give them, what I'm going to leave for them. And you know, the people who talk about today we had this one, I saw this clan day, you know. So age is not really a matter, an issue. Maturity is, and commitment is very important. Find someone that you really can grow together and someone who sees something in you. I was not this big, I was a 1 GB person. Eh? I was not this handsome, eh? But she saw something through. I don't know how I can put it. She saw something in me. Just like I was able to see something in her. So find someone who's able to bring the best out of you.
As someone who has deviated on her walk with God, Caroline intimates on why it is important to find your identity in the Lord.
God can see what the devil is doing in your life in all these messes. So when God tells us to not sin and do things, it is not for God, because that does not change God. The only thing is that we cannot achieve our destinies very well if we are doing that, but he does not love us less. So if we can know our identity is in Christ and not in our sins, then we can look back and say, okay, I drank again yesterday, but God, can you help me? You know, I puffed again yesterday, but God help me. You know, I went through rehab and I've relapsed. God help me. I am pregnant again with a third different man, and I'm not going to kill this child. But God, I know you can help me. And God is able to take all your story, all your messes, and actually use it very, very beautifully. So, so beautifully. Sometimes, every time I give this story, sometimes it hurts to go back there. It's really deep and dark to go back there. But every time somebody calls and says, you helped me, then it's just totally worth it. You helped me. I was about to, let me not say I have helped, but God has helped through me. I normally say when I go to heaven, there must be souls, like maybe tens, hundreds of them, who will say, we lived because of you.
Caroline is an author and has shared a lot more about her life-changing story in her book titled In the Arms of a Stranger.
So everything about me is in my website, www.carolinebongo.com. You can follow my blogs, you can follow everything about my music and everything in there as well. And yes, the book is available in Nuria in Kenya. It is available in Amazon, it is available in Lulu. So online it's available. If you're in Kenya, you go to Nuria. Nuria will send the book directly to you. Nuria, just pay Nuria directly, they deliver. Wherever you are in Kenya, Nuria will deliver to you. If you want online, it's Amazon, Lulu, just basically all the online bookstores.